G'day you mob, Pete here, and this is another episode of Aussie English, the number one place for anyone and everyone wanting to learn Australian English. So today I have a Goss episode for you where I sit down with my old man, my father, Ian Smissen, and we talk about the week's news, whether locally down under here in Australia or non-locally overseas in other parts of the world. Okay, and we sometimes also talk about whatever comes to mind, right? If we can think of something interesting to share with you guys related to us or Australia, we also talk about that in the Goss. So these episodes are specifically designed to try and give you content about many different topics where we're obviously speaking in English and there are multiple people having a natural and spontaneous conversation in English. So it is particularly good to improve your listening skills. In order to complement that though, I really recommend that you join the podcast membership or the academy membership at aussieenglish.com.au, where you will get access to the full transcripts of these episodes, the PDFs, the downloads, and you can also use the online PDF reader to read and listen at the same time. Okay, so if you really want to improve your listening skills fast, get the transcript, listen and read at the same time, keep practicing, and that is the quickest way to level up your English. Anyway, I've been rabbiting on a bit. I've been talking a bit. Let's just get into this episode, guys. Smack the bird, and let's get into it.
But,
all right, so this was a story.
Probably got the same ones.
Yeah, probably. It was Slim Pickens.
It was, as we've already discussed, in the one that either might have already been played or is coming up. Yeah,
yeah, we don't actually know the order until after we've recorded these.
No.
So how farmers in Tasmania deal with theft at their honesty system roadside stalls.
I didn't see this one. No,
all right.
This is a good one.
Yeah, well, so before we get into this story, do you want to talk about farm stalls on the side of the road and this culture in Australia?
It is a culture. I haven't been to many countries in the world, but I've travelled a lot in North America and I've never seen it. Or if I have seen it, I haven't noticed.
This was something Kel picked up on. We'd be driving around, whether in the country, it's never going to be really inside of cities, but, even around here in Bellarine Peninsula, and what you'll see
local farmers
is that farmers or even people with sort of large properties will have grown some kind of produce, like it could be anything from honey, vegetables,
tomatoes,
fruit,
potatoes,
even
horse poo,
chicken poo, sheep poo, and they'll have it out the front of their house with usually a sort of rudimentary stall or table, or often just maybe even a jar on the ground.
It's an honesty box,
and there'll be money in the jar. And there's just a sign that'll usually say sheep poo $2, or punnet of strawberries $3.50, and you're effectively able to drive up, park, get out, take as much as you want, and you're trusted to put your money into the jar or box or whatever it is there, the honesty box. So usually they're not locked, so it's not like a little box you have to shove it through a hole.
Often it's just a jam jar.
Yeah. But this is something that I think, at least since I've been around, that it's always been, happening in places.
Yeah.
I think I remember it up in Callista, you guys doing it potentially, or having people do it and going past their places. But
we used to do it, but we used to give it away. When I was a kid, we had an apricot tree that had more apricots on it than we could possibly deal with. And a lot of our neighbours would come and say, "Oh, can I take some apricots?" But we'd also every now and then, not very often, but every now and then we'd go, "Oh, we'll just bag up some apricots and leave them out and say, take some."
I remember when I was
should have sold them,
when I was living in North Melbourne, there was something, I don't know if it was done with the agreement of people whose houses had these fruit trees, but someone had created like a map that showed where all
where
these
the apple
fruit
trees and the apricot trees
and put them into everyone's sort of letterboxes, so that you could just go around and pull stuff off trees. And I don't think I really ever did it.
It's going to fall off and rot.
Yeah, exactly.
Then people might as well say, "Well, come and take them. My apples are hanging over the fence. Just come and take them."
Yeah, but I remember every time we go past these things, Kel always just giggles in the car. And I'm just like, what?
Is there any money in the jar?
No, she's always like, this would never happen in Brazil. This would never happen. And I'm always like, why, Kel? Surely people grow stuff. And she's like, but you would just take it. There's no way you just leave the money in the jar.
You take the tomatoes and the money.
And I was like, oh my God. So I guess I found this story interesting.
Yeah.
And
So, all right, cut to the chase. What happened?
Well, the story is effectively that we have these big farm stalls in Tasmania. Tasmania is this island state in the southeast of Australia, and it's very farming
smallest state, smallest population,
lots of produce there. And they have this, a lot of these small farms to big farms have these stalls set up out the front where, if they have produce that is unable to be sold to the wholesaler, if they're a huge, say, tomato grower, they'll put the sort of dodgy stuff in the box here. It's still good to eat, but they can't sell it.
Yeah.
And then you'll have everything to people who just have a few acres and they've got a few fruit trees and they want to make a few extra buck out the front. But they have had people doing the dodge on them and just taking both all of the produce and the money out of this thing. And you're kind of like, it's sacrilege. You just would never do that. You're breaking trust. It's like a societal trust that is sort of involved there.
Sharing quality food, and it's 90%. It's either food or fertilizer. Sharing quality food mostly that people have grown themselves. Usually, it might not be registered organic, but usually they're grown in homes and they're not using chemicals on them and stuff. So you can go and give them a wash and eat them. It's fine. And it's just become part of our society that, why not go and, I'd much rather go and buy tomatoes from the person down the road who's, selling them, even if it's the same price as the supermarket. Then usually it's cheaper than buy them from the supermarket. I've got no problem with buying from the supermarket because then eventually somebody has grown them and is trying to make money out of them. But, think global, act local. And if you're talking about global food supply, buy them from your next door neighbour, not from somebody who's, sent the tomatoes interstate or overseas to get to Australia.
Well, anyway. I wonder with this setup and these stalls, I think a big part of it that you wouldn't take is because it's a weird sort of setup. I think the money that anyone makes from this is relatively insubstantial.
Yeah, it's not going to be about people living.
But as a result of that, it's like, why would you ever steal? If it's going to be a few dollars or $10 or something, why would you bother take? It's like taking candy from a baby kind of thing. It's just, you don't need it. And
it's one of those things where, you're an evolutionary biologist and so am I.
Yeah,
you were. All right. Yeah.
Jesus.
Your previous
I can't
training.
Even remember my PhD.
No, well, I never finished mine, but it's this idea of, evolutionary cheating.
Yes.
That it doesn't work.
Game theory.
Yeah. And it only works if you're in the short term and if it's a very small minority of, animals, people, plants, whatever it happens to be that are actually doing it. And this is the same here. That, if I were to go there and go, drive past a local place that's got their tomatoes, 5 bags, $5 a bag out the front, and I just, forgetting stealing the money, if all I do is go and steal the tomatoes and not give them the money, then in the end, I'm going to lose because that person's just going to go, well, I'm not going to put my tomatoes out there. Mm-hmm. You're going to have
Everyone loses.
Everybody loses. So, the cheat ends up costing everybody, including themselves. Mm-hmm. And yes, I might sit there and go, hey, I got $5 worth of tomatoes for nothing. Woohoo!
Sucks to be you.
Yeah, it sucks to be you. Exactly. So I ate 2 salads and I'm done.
Yeah.
What am I going to do next time? Because they're not available next time. Yeah. So, it's just bizarre.
Yeah. So, it was interesting anyway, this story. They went through, I think there was a woman on Bruny Island who had all her cucumbers nicked and all the money was taken, and she posted her experience online and then found that there were a whole bunch of other people that were going through a similar sort of thing where people would just flog, say, Alex Griggs here from the Huon Valley. He was an apple farmer.
Yeah, that's what the apple capital of Australia, the Huon Valley in Tasmania.
He had to install security cameras over his farm stand. And he was saying, we have people drop into the farm each week saying they owe us money for bags that they took. And it's amazing that people will do this just for something like 30 cents. Yeah. But they still want to be honest. And then he said, maybe it's getting harder for people in this day and age to have cash on their on them at all times, especially correct money for $3 for a bag of apples. And then there was another guy who was a pear farmer, and he was saying he just has to factor in 10% loss of everything because people will nick 10% of whatever he puts out there. But still, I was thinking, crap, that's still good that you're getting 90% of people being honest. But I guess the besides just wanting to talk about this interesting aspect of Australian culture, because I'm sure it's widespread across the entire continent. I wanted to sort of understand or discuss a little bit more about that honesty and where does that come from in Australian culture? Because we seem to have, I mean, there's obviously good and bad sides to Aussie culture, but this definitely seems to be this interesting good side where we do have a lot of trust in the average person.
Yeah, and it's two-way trust. It's that, if I'm and I'll call them a farmer, but you're right, you say most of them are not farmers. In this case, they were, but in many cases, the ones we're talking about are just, mum and dad at home, and they've got more apricots than they need.
Yeah.
And so, they're not making money out of it, but they're just basically saying, just share what we've got.
Yeah.
And, if I get a bit of money out of it, means I can, maybe give you more next time. And it's two-way, because that means that I look at that and go, I appreciate that, and I'm happy to pay the money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's invariably cheaper than buying it from a shop. This is not
because you've cut out the middleman. There's
exactly,
no transport,
and it's not
there's
about
no
saying,
refrigeration.
I'm the best tomato grower in Tasmania, and I'm going to give you the best apples or tomatoes or whatever it is, and you're going to pay a premium for them. It's just saying, here's some stuff if you want it, pay for it, pay a little bit, keeps us going, and we're done. So in terms of back to your original question, I think that idea of it's part of that Australian culture, and it comes probably from this idea that, and it's an overused term, but this mateship thing in Australia.
Yeah.
But it's real, is that, when you identify as an Australian, you identify as part of a community of all sorts of people who call themselves Australian. And I use the example, and of Australia and New Zealand are the most fierce rivals when it comes to sport. And so it's like the big brother, little brother thing. And for all my New Zealand friends, I'm sorry about referring to you as little brothers, but
they tend to be built bigger than us.
They are built bigger than
Especially
us. Especially the Pacific
Maori.
Islanders, the Maori and the Pacific Islanders. But in terms of, population, there are, Melbourne has more people in it than New Zealand. But there is this fierce rivalry. But at the same time, if somebody is picking on a New Zealander, then the Australians will be the first one to jump the fence.
Yeah.
They'll be beating each other up on the field, but if somebody else is going to get involved, then it's, you can take on both of us now.
Only I can hit my little brother.
And it's that Australia-New Zealand, exactly. It's that Australia-New Zealand thing. And that mateship thing is built into both cultures, both Australia and New Zealand. And many other countries in the world have this sort of, parochial thing of, it's us against the world. But there's
just not the Scots.
But but there's something about, well, funnily enough, it's Scottish and Irish. It's the same.
I just think about the, I'm not picking on Scottish people, but that famous Simpson thing where, Willie, the janitor at the Scottish janitor, the ginger at the, at the primary school, he's like, there's nothing that Scots hate more than Brits.
Yes.
Except the Irish and other Scots.
Pretty much. But I think there is that thing of we're all in this together, and you're helping me out by providing stuff that I can get cheaper and better quality, probably.
Yeah.
And I'll just make sure that I pay for it. And
it's reciprocation.
It's reciprocation. Mm. And look, there's a basic honesty thing. And I just think most people in the world, I'm not going to say Australians are more honest than anybody else. I think most people in the world as individuals are honest.
Well, it's game theory, right?
Yeah. And most people will also go, and I was, while you were telling this story, I was thinking about an example, and I thought, have I got an example of somewhere where I've looked at this and gone, I could get away with this?
Yeah.
But I didn't. And many people might, sit there and go, oh, yeah, everybody would have just got away with it, flogged it and whatever. But I remember I went out to dinner with a work colleague of mine who was visiting from the United States years ago. And this is just the two of us, and we had dinner, and then she went to the toilet and I went to the toilet. And then we both came out, we just picked up our stuff and left. And the next day I went, I didn't pay.
To go to the toilet?
No, at the restaurant for dinner. And I rang her and said, did you pay for dinner? And she thought, I thought you did. And so
we got away with it.
My immediate reaction was, I just rang the restaurant and just said, look, I'm really sorry. We were at table whatever last night, and we both thought that we had paid, and it turns out that neither of us did.
And they're like, we know.
I'll drop by today and pay. And they said, oh, no, you can do it over the phone. I said, no, I want to face you and say, I'm sorry. I went, oh, most people wouldn't do that. And I actually said to him at the time, I said, I think most people would.
Yeah.
And I said, how often does this happen? He said, not very often. You know, people will walk out without paying, but he said most of the time they come back in and pay. And so I think there is that just inherent honesty when we're not trying to, yes, there are people who have got, criminal behavior and they're deliberately trying to do that. But most people are not criminal. And when they find that they've got something like that, they go, oh, of course I'm going to pay for the tomatoes. Oops, I forgot to pay for this. I'll go back and pay them. And people who will, I'll take the potatoes today, but I'll go back tomorrow and pay the people, and they'll probably pay more.
Well, it does come back to game theory, I think, especially when you are in small groups where you can keep track of what people are reciprocating and when they're not.
Yeah.
And it doesn't pay to be the person in a small group who ends up constantly playing the negative game of trying to get an advantage and cheating everyone. Yeah, because you're going to... It's like going out with people. I've got a bunch of friends, and a lot of them aren't the kind of people who will ever offer to shout you.
Yeah.
And so the moment you go out together, everyone's asshole tightens up.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, okay, how much did I pay? I had that one, and I had that one, and I'm going to pay for this one, but not that one. And everyone starts playing that game all of a sudden. The moment the first person at the group dinner says, oh, I'm just going to pay for myself. And you're just like, can't we just split it 6 ways or whatever? And you're just like...
Yeah. And look, I also have had... And look, there's part of it, I think, has come from my father, who ironically was Scottish, and the Scots are renowned for being tight asses with money, but he was particularly generous. But
well, he left Scotland. Maybe that was one of the reasons.
He did, yes.
Everyone's a tight ass.
His father was English, but he left at 5. But and...
That's how bad it was.
Yeah, exactly. I think I've always had this thing in me that you're the first person to, the old idea of, shouting at a pub. And, it's sort of, that whole culture has sort of disappeared now because people don't go to the pub just to drink anymore.
But they're just uni students.
They're uni, but often people go and they'll drink and they'll eat and if you're going to do that, some people are eating, some people aren't, then splitting the bill at the end doesn't make any sense. But, back in the day when,
just doing rounds.
Friday,
give us a jug.
Friday night, you'd go and, I'd be the first person to put my money on the bar and say, I'll buy the first round, because then I don't have to worry later of if I want to leave early or I want to, I don't know, oh, it's my shout. I'll get you next time, guys.
Back to a previous episode. Was this before or after you did the little sheep's races with the $2 notes?
Oh, the sheep races. Jeez. How do you remember sheep races?
I'll have to find it. I edited that episode.
You edited it.
I made the cover for that episode. I transcribed
you found a $2 note.
Yeah, exactly.
It was around that same time. So, yes. Yeah. To be fair, leaving early on the pub on a Friday night was highly unlikely because this is back in the days of 10 o'clock closing.
Those guys.
So back at 9:45, the bell would ring and then it was sheep races, and then go and look up that episode.
Yeah. It's a good episode, guys. It's one of the Goss episodes on $2 notes and sheep racing. It was pub culture, so go check it out. Yeah.
But that was the thing, is that you never shirk a shout.
Well, I always had those friends at school and uni. There was always one douchebag who would be the
same one.
He would be the one to leave just before it was his turn to have a shout.
You sit there and have 5 beers and then go, I got to go. See ya.
Yeah, sorry,
and he's
guys.
Gone before you can go, hey, money on the fridge.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where it's like, dude, you're getting a short-term win over a long-term gain because you're winning in the present, sacrificing the future, because we're either not going to invite you or we're just not going to shout anyone, and no one's going to shout anyone. So you're screwing everyone up.
Exactly.
To get a few pots extra each time you come out.
$20 worth of beer for nothing. And
and it would be the same where it would always be the one that I'm thinking about from high school. The moment he switched to water, it'd be like, beer. Oh, I'm just going to have water now, guys. And you're like, yeah, because it's your shout.
That's fine. You can have water. Buy me a beer.
Get a jug.
Yeah. So I used to work with some. I absolutely love Canada. It's my third favourite. New Zealand, second. My third favourite country in the world. I love Canadians.
Just not the
but they're
pub culture.
tight asses when it comes, and it's not that the individual people are necessarily assholes.
Well,
it's
they just don't have that culture.
They just
right?
don't have that culture of they go, oh well, here's my $20. Yeah, but you drank $30 worth of beer and you ate dinner. What? Sorry,
Yeah.
cough up 50 and then you can piss off. But
You need more Australians migrating to Canada.
I'll just pay for me. Okay.
Well, what do you think though? Like, we have that culture with ourselves, but amongst friends and peers, but we don't have a tipping culture here. Do you want to sort of touch on that a little bit? Because I'm sure Americans...
Do you want me to do my tipping rant?
Well, you can do it if you want. But Americans, I'm sure you would go to America and you probably see this difference in culture with shouting and rounds and this one's on me and you get the next one. Maybe not. I don't know. Do Americans do that? But they would come here and be like, what do you mean you don't tip people?
I know.
What you don't give them? How do they make money?
Yeah,
like, and you're like, they get a wage, mate. We
they
got a minimum wage in Australia.
Pay $20 an hour to work in a bar.
More than that now, it'd be like 25. I think.
I know. Australia. Yeah, tipping is not obligatory. Optional. Is the best way, but it's optional. Mm-hmm. And no waiter. And Pete used to work in the restaurant industry as a waiter. No waiter in Australia is going to look down their nose if you don't leave them a tip.
Well,
they might be a bit ticked off.
Depends how difficult you were.
If you've been really painful and they've bent over backwards to do everything they possibly can for you,
and then you're like, "Cheers, mate. See ya." There's vomit under the table.
Yeah,
enjoy.
Exactly.
You asshole.
Yeah. Whereas in America, and I've been to lots of restaurants in America that automatically put an 18% tip on the bill.
It's just assumed.
Sometimes it's 20% now. And
that always pissed me off so much when we were on holiday and I'd get my money ready. We went to Macca's. I went up. I'm like, I want a hamburger.
They don't
even
add the tax.
This is how much it is. Yeah, but that's what I mean. And then all of a sudden you give them the money and they're like, oh, but there's this extra thing on top of it.
You go and buy a $3.99 Happy Meal at McDonald's and they say that'll be $4.27.
Like, what? But the sign doesn't say that.
Yeah. And at least in Australia, we have our sales tax, GST, is built into the price. So you know what you're paying at the time. But the whole tipping thing is just, it originally came from, here's a little bit of history for you.
Oh, let me strap in. Right, where's my seatbelt?
Just go to sleep for a couple of minutes and I'll ring the bell when it's time to wake up.
Or buckle in because it's about to get interesting.
Tipping came from the tea houses in London in the 18th century. And, we've got a break in here. Got a break in.
You can
Noah, come in. Yeah, I'm about to tell you about tipping.
He's gonna love it.
No, he's buggered off.
Dragged away.
He's gone away.
Nice hair.
It's the tea houses. Twinings Tea created tea houses in the 18th century.
Twinings.
Yeah, no,
I didn't realise it was Twinings.
It's a single N.
I don't remember how it started. Drink it.
No, Twinings Tea. They created tea houses in the 18th century in London, and it was because it was a big thing. Because once England, went and effectively invaded India and took over the tea industry there.
They were like, "Oh my God, we don't have to just drink water."
And so they brought it back to England, and it became a big thing. It was a social thing that you went out and you went to a tea house, and
the British flogged tea from Asia.
They did.
That's it.
And they used to put little boxes on the side of the table, and if you wanted to be served first, you would be seen to be putting a coin in the box. And the box had 2 improved promptness, which meant you get served early. And then that got contracted to TIP because 2 improved promptness was a bit difficult to write on a little box on the side of your table.
I always thought it was like the tip of the amount that you pay goes up.
No. So you put the tip in before you got served in order to be served first. And the bigger the tip, the more you were going to get, or the more likely you were to get served first.
I feel like that's one of those apocryphal explanations. I mean, it's probably
It is actually true.
But you know the store high in transit and the fraternization under consent of the king.
Yeah, no.
But this is where the word shit and fuck came from.
They didn't.
These urban legends of storing horse manure high in transit on boats because if it got wet, I don't know, it could cause trouble or whatever. Yeah. And then the fraternization under consent of the king was like you could only have children if you had permission.
If you were legally married. Yeah. So shit and fuck aside.
Yeah.
That apparently is the history of tip. But so originally long story short, the idea was that you would tip first before you got served. So it was value adding to, enable you to get better service. In Australia, we still treat that, but in reverse. The idea, and I won't tip in Australia unless I've had good service.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody a waiter has added to the experience I've had in a restaurant, I will put a tip in.
Do you tip them directly? Or
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
So you tend to give them the money.
I will pay the bill by credit card, and I will leave cash. Typically, most places in the world now, you go to a restaurant and, you got to pay. They'll bring out the bill in a little leather envelope, little leather folder, and you leave your credit card, the FPOS machine, whatever. And then at the end, I'll just throw $20 or $50 or whatever it is, depending on how good they were and how many people were there and whatever else. So I'll leave the tip in cash, because that then allows the waiter, in a non-gender basis, the waiter to decide whether they share that with everybody or not. If I add the tip to the bill, there are plenty of restaurants around where 90% of that tip goes to the chef, and then the waiting staff who did the work. Like, frankly, I don't care how good the food is. I'm paying for the food. How good the service is unexpected.
Yeah.
I'll go to a high-class restaurant because of the food, and if the service is really good, I'll pay extra for the service. So that's the idea of tipping. In America, on the other hand, they do not have a minimum wage they do have a minimum wage. And I'll give you an example of this. This is from story from the early 2000s, 2004-ish. I was at a conference in San Diego, staying at a hotel out near the airport. And the airport is half an hour's drive from the middle of town.
I remember this story, yeah.
And so you're effectively you're isolated. Unless you wanted to get a taxi into town to go to a restaurant or a bar or something, you drank at the hotel bar. And it was a big bar, big hotel. It was a conference hotel. So, and there was one waitress waiting tables and two barmen. And it was distributed on a gender basis like that. Two barmen pouring the drinks, and this waitress would go around and, take your orders and serve you drinks. And it's a culture in America or North America in general, that is, you don't go to the bar and order a drink. You sit at a table and somebody will come and serve you. And typically that's because they want a tip. It adds to this tipping culture that I have to serve you in order to get paid for it. Whereas if you just go to the bar, you pay the, $8 for a beer and away you go.
It is interesting that come to you versus you go to them thing because of the tipping, which makes sense.
Exactly. And so this delightful young lady who was the waitress, in this place, the nights that we went there, because we were there for a conference, we were there for about 5 nights. I got to know her and, talk to her, and, there were slow times and there were busy times. But during the slow times, I actually asked her, I said, so how much do you earn in this job? She said, how much do I get paid or how much do I earn? And I said, how much do you get paid? And she said, I work a 10-hour shift and I get $20.
Yeah.
$2 an hour. I said, how much do you earn? She said, between $200 and $2,000 a night.
Damn.
And so tipping is never going to go away.
Yeah.
In the restaurants and bars,
where it's much better than the minimum wage in Australia.
There's nobody who is going to work for 10 hours and make $2,000.
Strippers.
The chef might. Well, strippers might, but they're being tipped. They're not even being paid. Most strippers are not, they work in a bar. They're not going to go, hey, I'll pay you $20 an hour to come and take your clothes off. It's just come and take your clothes off and people will pay you money. So
wouldn't have minded that when I was a waiter.
I know. That culture is never going to go. And look, fun of that, she was a university student, and she was at the University of Colorado, so we called her Colorado, because she wouldn't tell us her name, and that was fair enough. And she said she works for 6 weeks over summer, in San Diego. So she flies down to San Diego. She gets free accommodation at the hotel. She works in the bar for 6 weeks, and that pays her tuition and her living allowance for the year.
Jesus Christ! Especially in America, where tuition is through the roof.
I said, she said, on average, I make $1,000 a day.
Jesus,
$7,000 a week.
Insane.
And it's cash. Because. And she said, yes, the three of us, the bar, I split it with the bar. So sometimes she said, I'll be handling $5,000 or $6,000 in cash a night as just tips. But there'd be 500 people in the bar. It was a big bar. So, But yeah, so it's just a difference in culture. And so that's why Americans can't understand it when we don't tip. And that's why Australians have to get over this thing of, you're actually getting, and look, typically, other than high-end bars and high-end restaurants, food and drink is cheaper in places like the United States than it is in Australia. And part of that is that you're expected to be effectively paying the staff out of your own pocket, because the establishment is only paying them a bare minimum.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, hope you enjoyed that episode, guys.
Cheers. No tips.
See you next time.
Yeah. Bye.
Alrighty, you mob. Thank you so much for listening to or watching this episode of The Goss. If you would like to watch the video, if you're currently listening to it and not watching it, you can do so on the Aussie English channel on YouTube. You'll be able to subscribe to that. Just search Aussie English on YouTube. And if you're watching this and not listening to it, you can check this episode out also on the Aussie English podcast, which you can find via my free Aussie English podcast application on both Android and iPhone. You can download that for free, or you can find it via any other good podcast app that you've got on your phone. Spotify, podcasts from iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is. I'm your host, Pete. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a ripper of a day, and I will see you next time. Peace!